Picture this. You're reading a book that your friend or your teacher recommended. It started a bit slow, but soon you find yourself glued to the pages. You can't remove your eyes, and your heart begins to race as you fall into the world the author has created. The plot thickens. These feelings are the author's intention, and today we will be able to identify exactly where in the book they might happen and why. In other words, we'll be diagramming the plot. Today, you will need a pencil and a paper, and maybe a ruler or something straight to trace. If you need to pause to get stuff, do so now. Okay, let's start with a review of stories. In every story, fiction and nonfiction, there is a plot. The plot is the basic sequence of events that tell the story from beginning to end. In most fiction stories, there are two key characters that we want to pay attention to. First is the protagonist. In other words, the main character in which the story revolves around. The protagonist is often the good guy. The second main character that you want to pay attention to is the antagonist. And this is the character that is often considered the villain or the bad guy. And he's the character that goes against the main character, or our protagonist. They are often also the source of the main character's conflict. Here are a few examples of some well-known stories. Let's see if we could identify the protagonist, antagonist, and a short one-sentence plot.
Harry is an orphaned boy living with abusive relatives, until one day he receives a letter to attend the best wizard school in all of England, Hogwarts. There, he meets his best friends, and they must study to become great wizards and solve the mystery behind his parents' death. Together, they must fight to defeat the evil Lord Voldemort, who reveals himself as Harry's parents' murderer. Pause the video now, as the summary is on the screen, and write down who you think is the protagonist, the antagonist, and a short one-sentence plot. Are you all ready? Alright. This one is kind of easy. The story is called Harry Potter, so Harry will obviously be the protagonist. Lord Voldemort is the source of his conflict, and his conflict was who killed his parents. So clearly he would be the antagonist. If you hit those two, great job. Now, plots can vary depending on who writes it. So if your plot was anything similar to Harry is a young wizard who must train to get revenge for his parents' death, then you're well on your way. Alright, let's try one more. One of my favorites, Naruto. Naruto is a young ninja whose parents sacrificed themselves to save their village when he was a baby. Abandoned and excluded by his own people, he was forced to grow up with no friends or family. Despite this, Naruto aspires to become the strongest ninja and one day lead his village. But the evil Orochimaru threatens to destroy the ninja world as they know it. Pause this video now, as the summary is on the screen, and write down who you think is the protagonist, the antagonist, and a short one-sentence plot. Okay, let's review really quickly. Just like Harry Potter, Naruto is the title of the story, so most likely he would be the protagonist. Orochimaru stands in the way of Naruto's goal, so again, he is the source of his conflict, so Orochimaru is the antagonist. The plot now can vary depending on which angle you want to focus on. But if your plot sentence was anything along the lines of Naruto, a young ninja, aspires to become the greatest of his village and lead his people, then I think you're well on your way.
Alright, let's get stuck in. We know the basic idea of a plot, But to break it down even further, we want to draw what is called a plot diagram. It looks like this. In a plot diagram, there are 5 main points where certain pieces of information are found, and where you may have different emotional reactions. Let's use Naruto as an example. Check it out. First, we have the exposition. Notice how it is a flat line. I like to pretend this is a heart monitor. You might not get too excited or sad, but here is where you would find important pieces of information, such as the protagonist, like we mentioned before, other characters of importance, the setting, and things like that. Next, we have the rising action. Here is where your heart rate starts to, well, rise. This is where you typically meet the main conflict, or the problem the protagonist faces. Often, it is where the antagonist also becomes clear. To use my heart rate monitor analogy once again, we have generally a rise and a fall of emotion, but we see an increase in your heart rate as you lead to the anticipation of something exciting. Now it's time for the part you've all been waiting for, the peak of the mountain, the climax. Or, in other words, it's when the character faces his or her biggest test. It's the most entertaining part of the story, and where you definitely don't want to put the book down. After the climax, we have the falling action, where you begin to relax, and so does the plot. Here is where we usually see the character recover from the conflict. You can clearly distinguish the character from the beginning and now, or how the character has grown and learned from their face-off with the conflict in the climax. Finally, we have what is called the resolution. Once again, the action and the excitement flatlines. This is because the characters and the conflicts have all settled and now reflect on past events. Alright, let's try one on your own. Click the link in the description below and read the short story called Liza's First Spelling Bee. Once you have read it, draw a plot diagram and try to list 2 events or characteristics for each part of the diagram. The exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Here is an empty plot diagram to help guide you while you work. Pause the video now until you are finished reading and satisfied with your diagram.
30 seconds later.
Are you done? Great. Let's review notes. In your exposition, you have a lot of different characteristics, but some that you might wanted to have included were Liza, the character, the setting, which is a school, and maybe some of the teachers as other characters. In the rising action, we learned that she's going to enter a spelling bee, but she has to practice because it's only 3 weeks away. The climax is the spelling bee. The falling action is after we realize she loses. The resolution then is when she realizes that losing doesn't really matter and she can try again next year. Great job today, everyone. Stories can be exciting, sad, or scary. They can be simple or complicated. But all of them will share some literary elements. And using a plot diagram is a great tool for you to identify them, no matter the story. Stories have many literary elements. And if you would like to learn more about them, check out the Literary Devices website in the link below, and the intermediate and advanced videos on this channel. Remember, knowing these elements of stories is a competency that you will need to move on to the next levels. Remember to like, subscribe, and share these videos, and keep studying hard. Maybe one day you'll write your own story.